Cheryl Coker's car was discovered in a parking lot near Clancy's Tavern. In this surveillance video, Coker's car can be seen driving down Spinning Road before entering the back of the parking lot and pulling into a parking space and stopping. But because there wasn't enough motion on the screen, the motion-activated cameras don't pick up who left the car.
You wanted the best, you got the best. The hottest podcast in the world, True Crime Monkey!
Thank you to all the new listeners out there for tuning into the new True Crime Monkey podcast. As you may know, we are dropping 4 podcast episodes today as part of Launch Day. Make sure to check out the other episodes on Mara Murray, Nikki McCowan, and Erica Baker as well. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications to be alerted when we drop new episodes. Cheryl Coker, a wife, mother, and grandmother from Riverside, Ohio, a suburb of Dayton, Ohio, was born on April 24, 1972. In 1990, she graduated from Stebbins High School in Dayton, Ohio. After high school, she was soon hired at the General Motors Delphi plant in nearby Kettering, Ohio. Cheryl was briefly married and gave birth to her first daughter, Marissa. However, things did not work out with Cheryl's first husband, and they were later divorced. Cheryl continued to work at the General Motors Delphi plant and would soon meet Bill Coker. The two hit it off quickly, even though family members would later say they were very opposite personalities. Cheryl was very outgoing, while Bill was more quiet and introverted, but they seemed to balance each other out. They soon got married, and later Bill and Cheryl would have a daughter together, Michaela. The couple seemed very happy. They took the kids on vacations and attended all of the girls' sporting events together. They appeared to be a very happy family. But in the mid to late 2000s, Cheryl's employer, General Motors, declared bankruptcy and went through a restructuring process. During this time, Cheryl would lose her job at General Motors, but she did receive a healthy severance package. The family used some of that money to do some improvements on their home on Christy Avenue. Cheryl then attended National American College and graduated with her associate's degree in 2010. Cheryl's work career later consisted of being a surgical technician, a tissue bank technician, and her latest position was as a crash technician with the NHTSA, a job she truly enjoyed. She would be working at this same job at the time of her disappearance. Her husband Bill worked for a local big box wholesale club, but things weren't all as they seemed on the surface. Cheryl found a second cell phone that Bill had in his possession, a burner phone. Bill was having an affair. Cheryl confronted Bill about the affair, and he agreed to end it, which he did. In a somewhat strange twist of fate that would only come to light publicly after Cheryl disappeared, Bill and Cheryl had agreed to have an open marriage and become swingers, but with one rule: it can't involve love, it's just about the sex. No feelings involved. Cheryl's friends would later reveal that this was not done just for Bill, but that Cheryl was a willing participant in the agreement, and it seemed to be working for the couple. But things changed when Bill began having a relationship with a coworker at his job, and Cheryl found out about it. Her name would later be publicly known as Erin. Her last name is also publicly known, but we won't be mentioning it in this episode. Cheryl again confronted Bill, but this time he reportedly had no interest in giving up his extramarital affair. He also did not want a divorce until their youngest daughter, Michaela, who was then 15, finished high school. Cheryl, however, was not on board with this idea, and on September 21st, 2018, only 11 days before Cheryl would disappear, Cheryl Coker would file for divorce, seeking both custody of their daughter Michaela and child support. Bill Coker would be served those divorce papers 3 days later on September 24th. Another 3 days later, on September 27th, Bill took his daughter Michaela on a planned trip to Florida. Unbeknownst to Cheryl until they returned, there was also someone else accompanying Bill and Michaela on the trip. Bill's girlfriend, Erin. Now let's get to what happened. On the morning of October 2nd, 2018, Cheryl Coker left her home on Christy Avenue in Riverside, Ohio, to drop off her youngest daughter, Michaela, at Stebbins High School. After dropping her daughter off, Cheryl arrived back at home at about 7:35 a.m. It is known that Cheryl was on Facebook, both liking posts and making her own post, from about 7:35 to 7:45 a.m. Cheryl's cell phone pings at her home from 7:35 to 7:50 a.m. At approximately 10:52 a.m., Cheryl's cell phone pings near the Kroger supermarket at 700 Spinning Road. Surveillance footage acquired just days later showed Cheryl's 2016 Toyota Highlander pulling into a small shopping center at the corner of Spinning Road and Burkhardt Avenue, adjacent to the Kroger supermarket, which is only a short distance from her home. After parking the car, approximately 2 minutes later, an individual dressed in all black can be seen exiting the vehicle and walking in the opposite direction, away from the shopping center. Then, approximately 15 to 20 minutes later, a 911 caller reports a suspicious white male dressed in all black with his hood pulled up, walking near Utopia Place and Monday Court in the Coker Zone neighborhood, and only a short distance from the Coker residence. The caller then circled the block, fearing that the white male was up to something. That same caller then sees the suspicious male again, walking up Spring Garden Place at Christy Avenue, toward the back of Spinning Hills Middle School. The caller states that the man used his hands to conceal his face so he couldn't be seen. Just a moment later, a second 911 caller spots the same suspicious man walking toward the back of Spinning Hills Middle School. This caller also points out that it's odd that the person is dressed for cold weather, despite it being unseasonably high temperature for October 2nd. The second caller gives the same description as did the first caller. From 11:09 to 11:11 a.m., the suspicious male is seen on surveillance cameras located at the Spinning Hills Middle School, walking behind a row of houses toward the Coker residence. Make sure to check out the YouTube version of the Cheryl Coker podcast, as we'll take you behind the school and between the row of houses as we give you the killer's view as they walk toward the Coker home. Later that same evening, at 8:08 p.m., Cheryl's husband Bill Coker is seen on surveillance footage walking into the same Kroger supermarket wearing, you guessed it, all dark clothing, a black polo shirt, dark colored shorts, and dark colored shoes. At 8:11 p.m., Bill Coker makes a purchase at the Kroger and is seen exiting the building. This same footage reveals what appears to be a fresh abrasion on the back of Bill Coker's arm, just below his left elbow. Throughout the day and into the evening hours, and then on into Wednesday, no one had heard from Cheryl. Cheryl's daughter then decided to see if she could locate her mom via a Find My Phone app. She was successful in guessing Cheryl's password and was able to track the phone to a strip mall parking lot less than a mile from the Coker's home on Christy Avenue. Riverside Police were then called. The car was positively identified as belonging to Cheryl and was then searched. Inside her car were her purse, her credit cards, her ID, money, and her cell phone. Cheryl never went anywhere without her cell phone. It was her lifeline to stay in contact with her daughters, and especially with her mother, who was battling cancer. The next morning, police questioned people from the businesses located within the strip mall and inquired if any surveillance footage existed. And it did.
Coker's arrival to the shopping plaza was picked up by Joe Bromley's security cameras.
One camera was set to record constantly. One camera, which was actually Clancy's camera, was set to only motion record. So when the car pulled in, there's a few seconds where they don't get out of the car and there's no movement on the screen, the recorder shut off.
Police were able to observe Cheryl's Toyota Highlander pulling into the parking lot from Spinning Road at approximately 10:52 a.m. And also, the footage showed a figure dressed in all black, exiting the vehicle and walking away in the opposite direction. Obviously, Bill Coker would soon be questioned by the police. Bill claimed that early in the morning of Tuesday, October 2nd, that he was sleeping and Cheryl had woken him up, and stated that her car would not start, and asked if he could help jumpstart her car. Bill told police that he attempted to jumpstart the car but was unsuccessful. He then went back into the house and went back to sleep. This is the last time Bill claims to have seen or heard from Cheryl. When asked if he had any idea what could have happened to Cheryl, Bill would only state that she was participating in some, quote, risky behavior, alluding to the swinger lifestyle that they were participating in, and insinuated that she could have merely taken off with someone she had previously met. There was basically no movement on the case for several months, but on February 19, 2019, Riverside Police would hold a press conference and make an announcement that Bill Coker was their one and only suspect.
We have released to the news organizations today some surveillance footage, first being from Kroger's, the morning of her disappearance in the evening hours. We also released a 911 call that corresponds, we believe, corresponds with that footage, and then some surveillance footage from the exterior cameras at Spinning Hills Middle School, which butts up to the back of the Coker residence there on Christy Avenue. And I've did up a timeline for everything. I was going to just kind of go through the timeline. Cheryl Coker's phone records show she arrived back home after dropping her daughter off at school at approximately 7:35 a.m. She makes several Facebook posts between 7:40 to 7:45 a.m. Her phone pings at her house from 7:35 until approximately 10:51 a.m. Around 10:52 a.m., Cheryl's cell phone pings near Kroger's at 700 Spinning Road here in Riverside. At approximately 10:52 a.m., her Toyota Highlander enters the surveillance footage located there at Kroger's. The vehicle is parked on the far east part of the parking lot closer to Clancy's Tavern. A subject who appears to be dressed in all black exits the vehicle and walks north through the parking lot toward Burkhart Road. The person dressed in all black is seen walking around 10:53 a.m. A 911 caller reports a suspicious white male subject dressed in all black and with his hood pulled up walking in the neighborhood a short distance from the Coker residence. He first sees this white male subject on Utopia Place at Monday Court near the stop sign. The 911 caller circles the block because the man's acting suspicious, and he fears he's up to something. The 911 caller sees the suspicious male a second time walking up Spring Garden Place at Christy Avenue toward the back of Spinning Hills Middle School. The 911 caller notes that the man used his hands to conceal his face. This 911 call was received by dispatch at approximately 11:13 a.m. A second witness, whose name and information we're withholding right now, reported seeing the same man, and that person gave a very good description that matches the description given by the 911 caller. The witness reported how odd it was that the man was dressed for cold weather despite it being unseasonably warm temperatures that day. Again, on Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018. The witness gives nearly the same description again as the 911 caller. The suspicious white male subject is seen on 4 exterior cameras located at Spinning Hills. He's seen on these cameras between 11:09 a.m. and 11:10 a.m. Another video from inside Kroger's during the evening hours of October 2nd show William Coker enter the grocery store at approximately 8:08 p.m. He's seen wearing all dark clothing, a black polo shirt, dark colored shorts, and dark colored shoes. He makes a purchase and exits the store at approximately 8:11 p.m.
So at this time, Riverside Police are prepared to state that William Coker is the suspect, and could you term this case for us? What is this switched over to?
We're now treating this as a homicide investigation. There's a lot of information that we cannot discuss, but we've got some newly discovered evidence that is a key factor, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to comment on that right now, but that leads us to direct this to a homicide investigation, no longer just a missing person case.
And on camera now, the suspect or suspects that you have in mind for this?
William Coker, Cheryl's husband, is our one and only suspect at this time.
One of the things that Detective Stewart was going to talk about was William's behavior and demeanor throughout this investigation. 4.5 months now. Could you tell us, how helpful or not helpful he's been?
Mr. Coker has appeared for interviews we've conducted of him. One of the things is his concern as far as Cheryl's disappearance. 4.5 months. Conversed with Detective Abney. We're talking maybe one time. Mr. Coker has questioned us about, do we have any leads on the case? Is there any information you can provide to me? I am her husband. Is there anything you can tell me? So one time in 4.5 months we've been contacted by Mr. Coker in regards to Cheryl's whereabouts, concerning whether or not she's even alive. Where's she at? So that's kind of concerning to us. Another part of Mr. Coker's cooperation, he has come in, like I said, to be interviewed and talked to about this investigation. We have asked Mr. Coker to take a polygraph. At this current time, after multiple requests for a polygraph, Mr. Coker is reluctant to do so at this time.
With this kind of evidence against him and naming him now officially as the suspect in this case, why no arrest? Why is he not in custody?
What I can say is we're very confident in this case. We've done a lot of work, hundreds of hours of investigating on this case. It's still an active, open investigation. Unfortunately, Mrs. Coker has not been found yet. So that's one of our primary focuses, to say the least. But we are still gathering evidence. The primary reason we released this video and audio evidence to the news today is because we're hoping that if somebody has seen something that they haven't reported, they come forward. And that's our goal, because I do believe there could be somebody else in the neighborhood that saw something that day that could add to our case. So we feel like time-wise we're actually ahead of schedule is what we thought, given the fact that we still don't know where she's at. However, we're going to continue to investigate this and make sure that we've covered all bases.
Is William Coker a threat to anyone? Obviously, if he's the suspect in a murder case, you believe that he did bodily harm and killed Cheryl. With him not in custody, is he a threat to anyone else in the Riverside community?
I can't comment on his mindset or mentality or anything like that. All I can speak about is the facts and the circumstances, the evidence that we have. But as far as what's going through his head right now, I can't make any type of comments about that.
At this time, you've said that is there any indication of where Cheryl may be?
Unfortunately, there's not. We're hoping that if anybody has some information that maybe they're reluctant to give or scared for whatever reason, or if they saw something that day, or if anything that we showed jogs somebody's memory, we want that information. We've stated many times before, we follow up on every phone call, every lead, every email. We make sure we call everybody back. And we owe that to Cheryl, we owe that to her family. And a lot of focus is on Cheryl, which she's obviously the victim in this case, but her family are also victims as well. And our hearts go out to them. They're great people. They've done nothing but help us in this case. They've worked with us and not against us, which is, it's huge. They've taken a lot of backlash on social media for not speaking out enough. And I think that's very unfair, because the reason for that is we've asked them to keep the details of this case private. And they've done nothing but, again, work with us. So any type of, these Facebook pages where people are lashing out against the family or criticizing them, it's quite frankly, it's disgusting. Because all they're doing is what's best for Cheryl and what's best for this investigation. And you won't find nicer people than Cheryl's family.
Have you been able to pin down, or at least narrow down, a motive, a possible motive? Obviously, there was a lot of discussion, some made public, some not, about the nature of that relationship or that marriage. Motive-wise, are we any closer to finding out why William may have done this?
Well, I can't really speak about that a whole lot. I mean, it's obvious that they were going through a divorce. That was obviously going on a while before she disappeared. But anything further in terms of a motive, we're not going to discuss that at this time, unfortunately.
Was there any physical evidence or anything that turned this case from a disappearance, possible kidnapping, to murder? Was there something specific in the past couple of weeks that switched this over?
Yes, there was. I'm not going to be able to talk about it at all, unfortunately. But there is a key piece of evidence that we learned somewhat recently that made it very clear to us that this is now a homicide investigation.
Physical evidence?
I'm not going to comment on exactly what it is.
And obviously, since you haven't located Cheryl or told us about it, we can assume it's not a body, correct?
Yes,
okay.
Correct.
Family has been notified, obviously, and kept in contact. You mentioned, what kind of help do you still need from the community? Are there specific parts of this that you're asking people to do? Obviously, you get the information out, see if it jogs anybody's memory, but are there certain areas of this Miami Valley that you're trying to search? Are you asking people to join search teams? What does that entail?
The search team has kind of been a hot topic, especially on social media, and we've had some questions, and rightfully so. There's no leads as to where she's at right now. So if we had a place to narrow down and a place to search, we would be the first there. We would be canvassing any areas. We're not sure where she's at. We're not sure where to start looking at right now. If we did, we would have done that by now. We're hoping that we have a breakthrough in the case that would give us a place to look, and if that happens, we're going to be the first to be there.
When looking at this timeline that you put together, Cheryl last pinged her Facebook post around 7:45 that morning of the 2nd. The car, so there's a 3-hour window essentially of when the car is parked at Kroger from when it left her house, when she got back after dropping off her daughter. My question is, do you believe Cheryl was killed in that 3-hour window, or do you believe she was taken somewhere and killed later?
I believe something happened in that 3-hour plus window. We believe that something happened, and again, we do have some information that we can't discuss that makes us suspect that all the more.
Okay. DNA evidence, where does that stand in this case? How important is that in this case? Is there any that you're able to utilize?
Nothing that we can comment on right now.
Going back to the community helping with
Yes,
the
sir.
search parties and whatnot, we want to stress to the community that is very much we appreciate that very much on our end. I was looking at it more of like a teamwork type deal, a community coming together to help the police department while they are out doing a search party or looking in general areas and helping us out while we're doing the behind-the-scenes work of internal operations, things that the community can't do, So we really appreciate them going out and doing that. And I try to look at it as a teamwork, instead of, us being out there with them. They're doing search parties, we're doing internal work, and we really appreciate the community doing that.
What are the next steps for this case? Are you just waiting to gather more evidence, or do you expect to move in the next couple weeks with some, the new piece of evidence that you can't comment on? I guess my concern would be if I'm living in Riverside or in that neighborhood, you've named a murderer living next door, but he's not in custody. So what would the next steps be?
We can't speak about what we plan to do. We have a game plan. Again, we're extremely confident in this investigation. Everyone here at Riverside's been working hand in hand, all the detectives, all the patrolmen, the upper administration's helping out a lot as well. And we have had some outside help, and we're going to continue to build this case until it can't be built anymore. So I can't really talk about any type of timeline or what we're going to do, but all I can say is stress the fact that we are very optimistic and confident in this investigation.
Is there anything legally preventing you from arresting William Coker as the suspect at this time?
Not going to comment on that right now.
You're just waiting to build a more airtight case. Okay, that's next steps. Okay, anything else you want to add, gentlemen, that we haven't touched on?
Mr. Coker, to add to what Detective Seward said earlier, he's been cooperative at times with interviews and things like that, but not fully cooperative, and his cooperation level has definitely dropped over recent weeks and even months. Again, to touch on what he said, there hasn't been a lot of phone calls made or interest in this investigation. That was a red flag right away. And by his own admissions, he was home during this time period that's in question, this time frame. And the person in the videos, that person knew the area very well and seemed to have they were walking to the back of the Coker residence for a reason, and that was concerning to us. And again, by Mr. Coker's own admissions, he was at home during that time. So a lot of the things that he said timeline-wise and explanations make no logical sense to us.
Can you confirm that that person in black, the hood, the driver of the car that was seen by the 911 caller, is that William Coker?
I'm not going to say definitively who that is or who that's not, but I'm going to state again that whoever that person was seemed to be familiar with the Coker residence. That person was seen on camera walking right toward the back of their property, so that's all I can say about that.
Okay. The Coker's daughter, is she in any danger? What's her status as far as custody? Issue with William, issue with family?
We're not going to discuss anything involving the daughter.
Okay, that's one of the questions I had.
On February 19th, 2019, Bill Coker was officially named the one and only suspect in Cheryl's disappearance, which was then classified as a homicide. However, to this day, Bill Coker has not been charged. Shortly after Riverside Police announced that Bill Coker was the one and only suspect in Cheryl's disappearance, Mike Campbell, a reporter for WHIO-TV in Dayton, Ohio, was able to get the only known interview with Bill Coker via telephone, and here's what he had to say.
Whoever drove the car away from her had to come back to their own car, I would assume. I mean,
how about, they said the person was dressed in black pants, a black hoodie with the hood pulled up, and maybe some white gloves. Are those things you own?
no.
Is it tough to try? Do you feel like you're trying to prove a negative? In other words, you're trying, that you're in a spot where you're almost trying to prove that you didn't kill your wife? Is that how you feel?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, yeah.
What, I mean, you're trying to carry on, work, pay your bills, raise your daughter with all this hanging over your head and not knowing what happened to her. How do you do that?
It's not easy. I mean, I just try to think of what I need to do for her. That keeps driving me.
Do you have any idea what happened to Cheryl?
She was behaving in some pretty risky behavior right before she disappeared. I mean, and I haven't really been willing to put that out there because I didn't want to hear about it.
But now the finger's pointing at you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the police are saying you're the suspect, so, you need to try and convince people that you're not.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, have you thought about or have you hired a lawyer?
No, not yet, because I didn't do anything. I didn't felt that I needed one, but I guess I'm going to have to.
And that's, what would be, are you just going to go forward and keep working, keep doing what you do? Because again, if no one arrests you, that means, you have to keep living your life.
What am I supposed to do? I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, the question that police would ask you, or our audience would ask you, did you have anything to do with Cheryl's death? Did you kill her?
no, I didn't. I did not.
And you have any...
I've never in my entire life hurt anyone.
And right now, though, given that, when you came back from Florida, the very next day was the day that she apparently was the last time anyone saw her. Is that correct?
Yes.
So did you get to see her in between the time you came back and the time that she took Michaela to school that day?
I seen her the night we came back.
Okay, and then she left to school the next day, and you went over to the house after that?
No, I was here.
You were
still living together.
Okay, so you were already there. So when they left, did you ever see Cheryl come back after dropping off?
No, but I got up to for a few minutes and she was in the shower, but I didn't see her.
And this would have been after she dropped Michaela off?
Yes.
Okay, so then you didn't see her at that point. Then did you go back to sleep?
Yes.
And then when you woke back up, she was gone?
Yes.
And her car was obviously then gone as well?
Yes.
So who do you think that is on camera at the Kroger lot parking that car and then walking away?
I don't know, someone she met because she was meeting people and probably wanted me to think that she was at work. You know, I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Right. I appreciate you talking to us today, and going forward though, I mean, do you know, it looks like the police are focused on you, so does that mean to try and clear your name, are you going to have to hire a private investigator to try and come up with alternate theories, or, I mean, are you worried that they're focused only on you?
I mean, yeah, I guess they are because they don't have anything else. I mean, isn't that how it works? Is when no one knows what happened, it was the husband, right?
But you're saying when you got up that day, she was gone, her car was gone, and you never heard from her again or saw her again. All right. William, thank you so much for taking my call and speaking with me. I'm sure we'll use some of this on the news this afternoon, but I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Okay. You're at the house right now then, too?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Over a year would pass with no developments in the case. Many searches were conducted, including several by Texas EquiSearch, but nothing was ever found. That is, until Saturday, April 25th, 2020. A mushroom hunter discovered a skull and several bones, along with clothing fragments, while searching a wooded area off of Waynesville-Jamestown Road in Greene County, Ohio, less than 20 minutes from the Coker home. Police were called to the scene, and the remains were transported to the Montgomery County Coroner's Office in Dayton, Ohio. 2 days later, on April 27, 2020, the remains were positively identified as those of Cheryl Lynn Coker, missing since October 2, 2018, from Riverside, Ohio.
My name is Gene Fisher, F-I-S-C-H-E-R. I'm the Sheriff of Greene with an E on the end county. And we're here to talk about Saturday afternoon, about 5:30. We received a phone call from a resident on Waynesville-Jamestown Road who was out mushroom hunting and found what appeared to be bones in the field. The officers went down, detectives were called out. We recovered several bones and a skull that evening, and went back out to the scene today with BCI. The bones that were recovered were taken to the Montgomery County Crime Lab, and those bones were identified this afternoon as that of Cheryl Coker, this thing out of Riverside. With me is the Greene County Coroner, Kevin Sherritt, the Police Chief of Riverside, Frank Colon, and Major Frank Robinson, and Major Adam Colon, the Criminal Investigation Commander of Riverside Police Department. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kevin Sherritt, the Greene County Coroner.
Thank you, Gene. As the sheriff spoke, Saturday evening there were bones found on adjacent to Waynesville-Jamestown Road, Cedar Creek Township. Our office was notified at approximately 8 p.m. and responded to the scene. Those bones were retrieved and the scene was secured and investigated. Forensic autopsy was started on Sunday morning by Dr. Ken Harshbarger at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office, and based on evidence collected at the scene as well as the preliminary autopsy findings, we were able to conclusively make the identification of the deceased as being Cheryl Coker, birth date April 24, 1972. So the forensic autopsy is still ongoing, investigation is still ongoing. Family has been notified by the Riverside Police Department, and we are continuing to work this case at this time.
On September 8, 2020, after a private massive Christian burial, Cheryl Lynn Coker was laid to rest at Calvary Cemetery in Dayton, Ohio. There have to this date still been no arrests made or charges filed in this case. But are you still wondering why I was face to face with Bill Coker and why I was actually inside the Coker home? Here's part one. The reason I met Bill Coker was pure coincidence. It was early summer 2020 and I was shopping at the wholesale club where Bill Coker works. I was going through the checkout line and the manager came over to speak to the cashier for some unrelated issue. While this conversation was happening, another employee came over to speak to the manager. That employee was none other than Bill Coker. I knew who Bill was and what he looked like from following the case. Strangely enough, his name tag did not say Bill, it said Will. It could be for William, or maybe he had hoped that it might throw people off from knowing his true identity. Who knows? But while standing there in line, Bill and I made eye contact. He had no idea who I was, but I always wondered what he was thinking at that moment. As for me, I had a feeling go through me that I've only felt one other time. I felt as though I was looking at the devil. Many years ago, I was putting gas in my car, and so was a local accident attorney. We also made contact, and I had that same feeling shoot through me at that time. I thought I was looking at the devil. I knew nothing bad about the attorney, but that feeling is just one that I can never forget. Here's part two. I'm not a professional podcaster, at least not yet anyway. I'm a real estate appraiser. So in late May 2021, I received an order from a client to appraise a home in the Coker's neighborhood. It was for a nice older gentleman, probably in his 70s. He was very jovial throughout the whole inspection I was doing. And at the end of each inspection, I always ask the homeowners what type of improvements they have recently done, things that they think would have added value to the home. And it's basically just a conversation starter and to get the information that I needed. As part of any real estate appraisal, we look at similar recent home sales and similar homes that are currently offered for sale. Well, it just so happens that as part of my research, one of the comparable homes listed for sale was none other than the Coker home on Christy Avenue, which Bill had recently put on the market. Knowing that I had to drive by the house and photograph it, I asked the gentleman at the home I was appraising if, number one, he was aware of the case, and two, if the neighborhood and its residents in general had been affected by Cheryl's case. The previously jovial man suddenly was trying his best to fight back his tears. I felt horrible now for even asking, but the gentleman told me that he knew both Bill and Cheryl, not as friends per se, but that he always saw them at Kroger and they always seemed so happy. He couldn't understand why all this had happened. I apologized for asking, but thanked him for sharing his story with me. But that was only the beginning of the story. A month or so later, in June 2021, I received another appraisal order in the same neighborhood. It was for 5146 Christy Avenue. Yes, the actual Coker home. I made the appointment through the realtor, who stated that the homeowner we didn't discuss who it actually was at that time, would not be there, and she gave me a lockbox code and the location where the lockbox would be. So on the day of the appointment, I pulled up to the house for the appointment, and there was a car still parked in the driveway. It was not Cheryl's 2016 Toyota Highlander, which I assumed was still being held by police as evidence in the case. So I assumed it could only be Bill's car. Also, there was no lockbox in the location I was told it would be. This does happen somewhat frequently and usually means that the homeowner is actually there, even though the realtor stated they wouldn't be. So I ring the doorbell and expect to see Bill face to face yet again, but no one ever came to the door. So I looked around to the front of the property to see if someone had moved the lockbox, and they had. I then removed the key from the lockbox and went inside to do my appraisal inspection. The house was very clean and very well kept, and in good shape. I've done several appraisals in this neighborhood over the years, and the Coker home was easily the nicest I've seen. I thought it would be very weird or creepy being in there all alone, but it really wasn't. The investigator in me really wanted to check out the house more in depth than is required for an appraisal, but you have to be professional, especially these days when people could be monitoring you on hidden cameras from anywhere. I can say, however, that I was a little freaked out when I was in the back of the home in the enclosed patio, which has an aluminum roof, when a heavy rainfall started out of nowhere. It kind of startled me a little bit, but I did my job, locked up, and left. The home was later recorded in county records as being sold in October 2021. I assume the delay was due to the legalities of Cheryl still being on the title for the home. Make sure to check out The Murder of Cheryl Coker, Part 2, The Additional Footage, where we'll take an inside look through the eyes of her killer. We'll follow the same path from the Coker home to the Kroger parking lot where her car was abandoned, then back to the Coker home where her body was likely retrieved, and finally all the way to the site where her remains would finally be discovered. Again, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the True Crime Monkey podcast on the case of Cheryl Coker. But with no arrests and no convictions, this case is far from over. If you have any information on this case, please call the Riverside, Ohio Police Department at 937-233-1801.